And we're live. All right. I'm going to play our intro here because people like the repetition. Let's play the intro. You got your intro, and now they like hearing my intro because they love hearing my voice for some reason every week. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports post-podcast live stream. I'm Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis and Lindsay Poss on the live stream today. For those of you who are new to the live stream, we do this every Wednesday after we tape the podcast. It's a post-podcast live stream. It's the official post-podcast live stream of esports. I mean, let's face it. And we don't cover the most pressing topics and news of the week. We cover the stuff we didn't get to on the podcast, so kind of the leftovers. It's supposed to be a little bit more fun and lighthearted. For those of you coming back from last week who watched last week, thank you. We know the audiences are small still, but we love doing this, so we're going to keep doing it anyways. Also, we want this to be very interactive. If you have questions for any of us, if you have comments, please, we read them all. Doesn't matter how offensive they are. We are still going to get to them. Welcome, guys.
We
Thank you.
Read them all. We do read them all. Yeah.
Sorry, we're late this week. Sorry, we're late.
Yeah. And we're still in pilot phase a little bit, guys. We're still trying to figure out, even the start time, right? There's a couple more of these where we just do practice and figure out what works for format. Like they say, video is a different medium. We have to spend some time to unpack it, but we have a lot of fun doing these. It's great to chill post podcast and have a more casual conversation with, I think lighter hearted topics. And we're thrilled to have Lindsay. Lindsay's here today. So bonus guest as well. And a lot of fun extra esports issues to excavate if we want to go for maximum alliteration.
Being tested. No pressure, Lindsay.
I know. I'm really on the spot. Jeez. Got the invite like 3 minutes ago.
But the idea is for our viewers, we're going to try and get the guest who was on the podcast to come on. Sometimes they don't want to come on. They've just spent the last hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm just the backup nerd that they called.
Yeah, we want a rotating cast of co-hosts to add to the discussion. And so, that's the hope here.
The vision for the people who are watching, we're thinking about maybe doing some sort of like almost panel or kind of like, because you get Paul and I so much on the podcast, right? Like,
yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, I know, right? And I mean, obviously, Paul and William, it's like, it's like soy and sauce.
Can there be too much Paul and William? I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
What are we? What did you just compare us to?
Soy and sauce? Is that not? Is that...
Okay. Mustard and ketchup.
Yeah, I've already struck a deal where Paul and I are Dog the Bounty Hunter and Beth. So you're gonna have to come with a more creative duo than soy and sauce.
Startlingly apropos yet a little unsensitive. Didn't one of them die recently?
Yes. This is not gaming related at all. Just FYI.
This is like difficult to tell them apart. Yeah, just one of them. Who knows?
No. Yeah, but again, I think it's good for us to have some banter because it's like the format of the after stream, right? We are the after podcast, right? We get to talk about less serious things. So Dog the Bounty Hunter, I think it's fair game. You tell us live stream viewers if it is or if it isn't. But yeah. The
comparison to me and Dog the Bounty Hunter is fair game. Well, how about we get to a topic? The two
Let's
of
do
you
a topic.
Comparing me to Dog the Bounty Hunter. Thank you very much.
I'm not comparing you to there's. Oh my God! All right, we got to get off this. I'm not comparing you to.
You're Dog and I'm Beth. We could switch it. I could be Dog.
Who am I? Am I the bounty? Is that the only one that's left?
That would be the fastest bounty ever. This would not be.
You show up, you're like, well, he was the only person in the Heroes of the Storm general chat channel. All right,
I have no more Heroes of the Storm jokes. So I use them all on the podcast.
I got tired of writing them. I was Paul's writer. Anyway, to the news.
Mr. Easily Amused says he agrees with me being Dog because he took a dig at my screen name last cast. But yeah, how do I not take a dig at that, Mr. Easily Amused? Let's talk about GameStop. GameStop sales took a huge hit as coronavirus pandemic led to global store closures. gist of this is they did worse than the street expected. I mean, should I even pat myself on the back on this one for like prophesizing the death of GameStop? Did not everyone see this?
I mean,
William, you are the last person to go to a GameStop, right? I think you're their last customer.
I actually had an experience. I've had a lot of GameStop experiences because GameStop's doing a lot of sales for people who don't know. Like GameStop is pretty much running essentially what amounts to corporate policy of if you show up, we give it to you. Like, you know, like it's that level for them right now. And it's
the same tactic as mattress firms.
Exactly. Actually, there's quite a strong parallel between GameStop and mattresses. But basically, like, and so I was in some Reddit board and they said call, and I had this experience where I was looking for a copy of a game. So you do the store finder, it finds a store that's open near you that supposedly has the game. You call them, they do not have the game in stock. I mean, it's just like this goes back to I said this the last time we talked about GameStop. Yes, they're in a bad business model. Yes, that's a problem. But they fundamentally also have an executional problem. Like they shifted their business years ago to this low inventory, high margin used game models, all this other stuff that made sense as short-term profit maximization, but did not really position them as a healthy long-term business, independent of the trend towards digital revenues and digital games. And now you have that trend exacerbating pressure on the business. I mean, the thing that surprised me, and this is 34%, I would have expected sales to be down like 90%. So like this still means, I mean, the bigger question is we're so few people shopping at GameStop before that it was like 3 people were going a month and now only 2 showed up. So that, because how is the decline only 34%? The stores aren't open.
Well,
they
still lost $165 million. I mean, this is like, that's no small feat.
Yeah.
You have to give them some credit. That's a lot of money to lose. I mean, Lindsay, you're a more, I would qualify you as a more casual gamer. Is there anything about their business model that appeals to you? Like, okay, are we missing something because we're just elitists who don't,
Yeah. Well, okay. So I have 2 points here. The first point is that, I have a confession to make that this household has ordered things from GameStop in quarantine. So
wow. Okay.
They really have had some great sales. So maybe
Thank you.
What have you ordered?
William and I are helping to boost those members currently.
We literally, I still have my GameStop members card. Like I'm not letting that thing go. I'm like,
what were you buying at GameStop?
They had deals for games, and the funny part was it was $14.99 and free shipping. So a lot of their games were priced at $14.98. But then there was a lot of sales on.
And William, you're even worse. You're calling the GameStop to see if something's in stock.
Yeah,
go on Amazon and search it.
Oh my God, Paul. The only thing that kept me from 1995 was not having a rotary phone. Like it was like literally that level. Like I was looking at myself and I was like, hello, middle school William.
Like, could you not download the game? Like, did you have no other choice? Did you please explain to me what got you to such a point of desperation?
So without going too far into the weeds, there are reasons to want to own boxed copies of games today that are legitimate gaming reasons. For example, speedrunning. If you want an early pre-patch version of a game for speedrunning purposes, GameStops are actually a pretty good place to buy them from because they basically only stock the first run of cartridges or discs or whatever it is. And yeah, so I mean, I was hunting down some stuff that I like speedrunning. What can I say?
But you can't speedrun on a digital game?
It's to down patch because certain tactics and strategies get patched out as the game is updated. And so if you want to do down patching, you generally need it varies. There's optimal versions to run on, right? Because sometimes bugs and glitches get introduced. But generally, like, for example, Mario Odyssey, you generally want like the version 0 if you can get it because there's glitches that got patched out later. I mean, let's not bore people with we're a business podcast and a gaming podcast. But yes, if you speedrun, hit me up because I love it.
Interesting.
Speed running. But anyway, the second point I was going to make is I don't know how any brick and mortar retail business, especially when this niche is really going to survive in the future. I don't know how
Yeah.
GameStop has done it thus far. Their adaptation to any form of digital business or online business was pretty terrible. And if you go into their stores now, there's like stuffed animals everywhere, and it's basically like 10% games and 90% Fortnite stuffed llamas and other merch. It just doesn't
They
like sophisticated gamer to me.
they like died by becoming Hot Topic. Like,
Right,
don't you feel that's what happened to GameStop? Is like they were like in the mall and they were like, oh, that business looks great. What if we started selling t-shirts? Man, the Hot Topic can do no wrong. They're the Hot Topic. And then, like, it's like they migrated from a bad business model to a worse business model, but they didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's also what I mean about, like, I bet the margins on those products look great, right? I bet like there's margin issues with distribution and PC games, and that's why they went to the used market. I bet the margin on a Fortnite plush is pretty darn good. You know what I mean? That's low quality plush, right?
But how
So
are you selling?
well, this is the trap that I honestly think GameStop was a victim of the the whale user trap, right? They were focusing on a narrow band of sales and goods that were performing at very high margins, but they were missing out that those were drifting them away from their core business model. Like GameStop's could have they had a hard, let's be honest, they had a hard time of it. Games are going to be digital, but they could have innovated in ways that kept the physical stores relevant and didn't turn them into bad Amazon, vendors, right? Like literally all of the GameStop store today could be an Amazon third-party vendor. Like that's what it is,
So Adam says shocked, not so shocked, obviously.
Adam, a regular, which we really appreciate. Will we iterate this for you?
At the outcome of GameStop. And Mr. Easily Amused, now I'm not so easily amused. He's definitely knocking our skills as co-hosts, William, but it's earned, it's deserved here. He says, "Sorry if I missed it. Did you guys already introduce Lindsay and her background?"
I don't have any. Okay, listen.
Come on,
no time
Lindsay.
to prepare a background for this call.
Yeah.
Give us the 2-minute background. What you do?
Yeah. Explain. Sell us on the Lindsay Post story for the live stream audience.
Oh, geez. You're not even going to do it for me? This is bad content.
No, we're going to make it hard. No, actually, to tee it up, to help you, though, actually, for the live, Lindsay actually wrote a research paper, right, on esports recently, which is one of the big reasons why we wanted to have her on. We actually should have you just as a guest at the regular podcast, because the research paper is very interesting.
Did you read it?
But, yeah. What?
Did you read it? I was
Parts of
going
it,
to say,
no.
it just came out on Monday. I would have been very impressed.
No, Paul sent it over to me. So of course, yeah. We have to do our background, Lindsay. We have to do our background for this podcast, right? Otherwise, we're just pundits, but there's real research here.
No, like shill your think tank. Like let the viewers know what you do.
So I am Director of Communications at the Technology Policy Institute, where we cover tech and economic issues, which being Director of Comms is actually really fun. So I get to design a lot of the stuff that we put out. And then I also do my own research on esports. It's a new topic for us, and I've been the one to tackle it. And it took me a little while to convince my boss that it was a big deal, which is in fact why I started writing the paper that I did, to convince everyone else that it is in fact a big deal. And it's definitely more of an introductory paper for people who are a little bit unfamiliar with the space. I go through a little bit of data analysis using the American Time Use Survey, which is a yearly survey conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that surveys 30,000 households across the U.S. So there's some interesting trends and patterns there with how much time people are spending on gaming. And then I go into a little bit of what it means for the mostly ad and traditional media industries. But I'm looking for this paper to be the start of many research papers. So go out, find it, read it, love it. If you hate it, don't tell me.
Wait, we have a good comment in the chat. Mr. Easily Amused asked, can we pop that up? What's the paper title called?
Why don't I just drop it in the chat?
Yeah, you should be able to link to it.
Yeah, can we do that? This is us learning live streaming functionality. Thank guys, like we're literally
high tech
out. Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
And they can also find you on LinkedIn, right, Lindsay?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, both at Lindsay Post, the exact same way my name is spelled.
While Lindsay's popping that in the chat, let's move on to the next story we never got around to.
Yeah,
because I think this one's going to be a fun one. I'm almost tired of knocking these guys because I think they're just so easy to knock. But FaZe Clan in the news again, announcing that they're getting into the movie business. And the article talks about how they've essentially partnered with a company called Invisible Narratives, film production company, founded by a former Paramount producer. And the idea is to leverage their creators, leverage their audience, and create movies about the org and FaZe Clan. I don't know what the movies are going to be about, to be honest, but are we going to see a FaZe Clan universe, guys? Like, do you see that happening? Is this legitimate?
I think. Have you ever seen that? Like, there's the website of Buried on Netflix or whatever, where they track like all the rejected celebrity, like all the celebrity concepts that somehow made it through Greenlight because there was some sort of tenuous connection to presence or marketability that Netflix is quickly identified as a problem, and it's costless for them to add it to their content shelf rack, but they're not going to drive any eyeballs to it. That is the definition of, I feel like, what this deal will produce. It feels like it's just apart from anything else, like it's a weird strategy to do like this broad, like what it should be is there's still an opportunity to do a definitive movie on esports. Why is FaZe Clan not taking a bigger positioning? Instead, they're taking what honestly looks to me like a content sludge approach where they're going to drip this out. They're working with, and actually I think Invisible Narratives is reasonably well repped in the industry. Like they're not a small partner, but the reality is I don't think the FaZe Clan stakeholders by themselves, despite having large followings and passionate fans, I'm not trying to knock them, but it takes a lot to anchor a film. Like, come on, like Tom Cruise doesn't anchor every movie he's in successfully. I'm not 100% convinced that the content library is deep or the creator library is deep enough at FaZe Clan today to make that work without a lot more piloting and proof pointing happen than just leaping into a deal like this.
Lindsay, do you think anyone other than a hardcore FaZe fan would even watch a movie set in the FaZe Clan universe? Do you think there's any appeal outside of the hardcore FaZe fan base?
No, I think that the 10 and 11-year-olds who follow famous YouTubers could perhaps have an interest, but I'm not exactly sure if that's the audience that they're trying to capture.
I mean, it could be. Yeah. It could be. I don't know. Like, I don't know what FaZe Clan's core audience looks like from a demographics perspective. I would assume it trends sort of young teens. Mm-hmm. I just think this is like they're an org that's so much fluff. Like to me, they're the epitome of the fluffy org that has no substance. It's all sizzle. They're mostly kind of brain dead bozos making content, and the content's like, let me jump off the roof of the gamer house. Let me film these 12 headshots in a row. I'm exaggerating a bit to make the point, William. Like, I understand that, it's maybe unfair.
Like the content is definitely not for us, but there's a large group of people who it is for and who really like it and who, what do? You do the FaZe Clan. This is the F thing that you're supposed to write. Like you go, I mean, there's a large group of people for whom this is, and it's been a very successful strategy in the team space. Like as a team owner operator myself, there's a lot you can learn from how FaZe Clan is positioned. They've done some things incredibly well. I still think strategic leaps like this need to be very well bridged, right? You need to lay a lot of groundwork and a lot of track. And I think it's hard to believe that the existing content production phase is doing justifies a jump like this,
They are at the confluence of gaming and influencers, but we haven't really seen any examples of influencers producing any type of traditional media that's been successful. So I'm not exactly sure. They would be one of the first. I mean, I can't think of.
I'm trying to think. Are there good examples of that? Gaming influencers who have.
Well, even regular influencers, like the Kardashians have a reality show, but they don't have any movies.
Yeah.
I can't really think of any influencer universe that has stepped outside of reality shows with any type of success.
And in fact, there's almost more touch points. I agree, by the way. It's Mr. Easily Amused. Man, you're jumping in this. Agreed with you, Lindsay. Said that was a great point there. Mm-hmm. And I completely agree. But I also feel like there's almost a track record of the opposite. If you look at other people jumping media, it's almost always a disaster when, say, authors like Stephen King produce films, right? Like there's a reason why Stephen King said, I'm never going to direct or produce my movies anymore. It's because he didn't make very good movies, despite being one of the greatest storytellers of our time. And I truly believe that. I'll go to bat for Stephen King any day. You're almost, when you're really good at one type of medium, you almost struggle in others because you're so specialized, because what you built and structured is so unique to that form factor. And that's what I mean about laying the track work. Like you would expect these guys to experiment. Give me 30-minute pre-scripted long form content from FaZe Clan first. Give me the short form improv equivalent here before we go to the long form. Show us that we're ready for this, because I think what this is. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
in FaZe's defense, they did partner with a big, or not so big, but a production studio, because they probably know they can't do this themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So they did bring in some outside expertise. I just think the depth of content that exists there, like the depth of the IP around FaZe Clan, is really shallow. Like it's really pretty shallow. I think it's much more shallow than FaZe Clan thinks.
I keep thinking about a couple of weeks ago when William mentioned that he would love to see Nintendo put some sort of cartoon or universe out there for kids to watch. And there's so much more opportunity to build a storyline and characters than there is from FaZe Clan. And for the record, I would love my future children to watch a cartoon about Super Mario World.
But hold on. Can we use this as a moment to give love to the doc? Because this is what I mean. And I think you're saying that the content is weak. And I want to be careful about critical of FaZe Clan, because they have done a ton of things really well, right? I don't want to come across, but I think if you heard the doc was producing a movie, I think we'd all feel differently about it. I think we'd say, I get how, wow, that'll be tough to keep it interesting for 2 hours, but I get that there's a character there. There's a perspective on the world. There's, big thing in film is you need the paradigm of the viewer. Like
you could get the origin story. He translates as an action hero, like he could be the action hero.
Yeah, like an influencer type though. That's the way he presented himself is much different than doing kickflips on Instagram. Not that there's anything wrong with doing kickflips on Instagram, but the dog has a whole fantasy around himself.
Yeah, but when we had this, when I was in toy, we had this concept of something being toyetic, which is just some properties lend themselves better to play patterns, to being fun, to intangible, right? Like I think there's an analogous concept here, filmatic, right? Like some characters and story, it's just they're built. And you're right, Paul. I can think of 10 different questions I have about Dr. Disrespect that would make fun scenes. I would I
want to see him winning the 1993-94 video gaming championships. I want to see World. I want to be there. I want the movie to take me there.
His full potential, even from his youth.
I want to see that dude in the supermarket. I want to know what the doc shopping is like. Like he has the interaction with the 65-year-old cashier who's like, "What do you do for a job?" And he's like, "I grow my mustache." Yeah.
You saw him when he went to the basketball game, right? I'm just looking this up.
Yeah. Are we allowed to show that on our live stream? What's the rule for live streaming?
No, I'm just going to show an image, a still image, if I can. Oh, yeah, here, hold on. I'll bring this up. Like, to me, this, in some ways, it's the perfect example of how his character extends almost to the real world. Like he went to an NBA Finals game in his full blown getup with the headphones still on, the mustache. Like to me, this is a guy committed to a character, not committed to creating content. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like there's real commitment to a character.
And I guess that goes to the difference of films versus the live stream stuff. That is the live stream stuff FaZe does right now is fundamentally it trades on the people being charismatic, right? And being people that you idolize, you want to be like, right? You know what I mean? That's fundamentally what it is. It's an idolization. And I get that. That's very powerful. But films and narrative driven properties, a lot of times that idolization framework doesn't translate. Like, it's not something the main characters need to be relatable, but it's not, film and media aren't power fantasies, right? Which is sort of what live streaming is a little bit to some extent. They're narratives. They have a climax, they have a zenith, which is, stuff doesn't go well, right? And the Doc is a character. So even though we like him and he might even be relatable, like the way he gets mad about games is a way I would like to get mad about games, right? Even though he's relatable, he's not you, and therefore you can see him in uncomfortable or different or strange situations. And yeah, I find it tough to believe, fundamentally they're not, the appeal of FaZe Clan is they're not acting, right? And films is about acting, and I think that's maybe overly simplistic, but that's the challenge we see there.
I mean, there's also the challenge of FaZe Clan being in the news pretty negatively recently. I'm sure you guys saw, I don't even know which member of the FaZe Clan, but was kicked out basically for acting pretty inappropriately. I mean, we don't need to go in depth there, but they've had a lot of controversy around some of their members being underage or acting inappropriately, or, like they're mired in some controversy that makes them somewhat polluted from a mainstream audience perspective. Lindsay, you were going to say something before we move on.
Yeah, I just was going to say that I would absolutely watch a show where Dr. Disrespect went into GameStop.
Probably. If GameStop paid him enough money, I'm sure he would.
Oh my God, he'd single-handedly unrecessed the business.
There you go, GameStop. That one was free.
Burning death. We don't know.
Seriously though, I mean, the Doc is great. We're gonna look back and we're gonna see the Doc as like a different figure, in the streaming world. It's tough to appreciate him now, but he's a different class to himself. Anyway.
Let's talk about a story that's at the intersection of sports and esports. So this was an article that came out. New Mets suitor emerges. Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. This was interesting because, as many know, the Mets have been looking for a buyer. The family that owns the Mets also are majority owners in Anbox, the New York-based org that owns the NYXL and the New York Subliners. I never know how to pronounce it. And so they've got they've got traditional sports and sports, and Harris Blitzer also has this combination of traditional sports and esports, in that they own the New Jersey Devils and the 76ers. William, is this a bailout for Anbox fundamentally, you think, if this deal goes through?
Ooh. I don't know if Anbox needs a bailout, but it's certainly a wonderful Hail Mary for them. Like it's a wonderful gift, right? It's a present I would like to unwrap.
We know they need a bailout because the Mets need a buyer and Anbox needs an investor. Anbox has been out raising money, we know, unsuccessfully so far. No one's heard of any announced deal. Is this the Hail Mary? Like, is this
there's certainly some synergies, right? In terms of geography, in terms of esports properties that are co-owned, right? I mean, I don't believe Dignitas is present in either the Overwatch League or the Call of Duty League.
They're not?
At the same time, and full disclosure, I have I've done business with the Dignitas folks. They're really lovely. They also have their head on straight. They're going to value those properties correctly, I would imagine, right? I don't know if it is a Hail Mary, if it is an angel coming in from above. I expect it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride because I don't think either the Mets or the Anbox people will get the valuation they would maybe hope to get from a more sophisticated investor like this, just bluntly. This is not the guy I would want to call to say, help, I need somebody to, I need a relief on my mortgage. Let's put it that way, right? This is not friendly Mr. John's Bank. This is, like Evil Brothers Inc. They'll make sure that
they're savvy, that they understand the value of things in the space.
Exactly. They will price the asset correctly. And I suspect a lot of the Overwatch and even the Call of Duty stuff, I think we've been pretty transparent on the podcast. We think those valuations are too high. I suspect it will be a tough pill for the Mets to get a valuation on that investment from somebody who's really in the space. And by the way, who owns great assets like an LCS team, right? This will not be a merger of equals. Let's put it that way.
Lindsay, I'm curious your thoughts on it. Like Andbox, you know, you and I have talked about how badly they've branded that. But just your thoughts on, you know, if you think this makes sense, or you think these are just rumors, you think this is just people poking around. Like, why would a company that has good sports franchises, and I would argue relatively valuable esports franchises, why go hunting for a Mets team that's losing millions, an Overwatch team that's losing millions, a COD League team that's losing millions? Like, literally, every single one of these assets is losing millions of dollars. Why go hunting for that?
Well, I'm not an investment advisor, it is not something that looks like a good move based on that assessment. I don't know. I still think that there's a weird overlap between people trying to connect traditional sports and esports, and I'm not sure that I know where that's going or if it's headed in the right direction. And I think this is just a symptom of that. I mean, obviously, we've seen so many owners, so many NFL and NBA owners jump into Overwatch League. And
well, let's put it this way. One of the other suitors mentioned in this article is A-Rod and Jennifer Lopez.
I saw that.
Right? If Jennifer Lopez and A-Rod bought Andbox, would you be more likely to go to an NYXL match if you knew J-Lo owned that Overwatch League team?
For the record, I have been to Jay-Z and Beyonce's music festival for that exact reason.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes.
Okay, well,
they have a great music festival, and they had great artists regardless, but I got to see Beyonce celebrating her birthday and singing her own songs when she was like 10 feet away from me, which was very cool for a lowly plebeian like me.
No, but that's the power of the Jennifer Lopez brand, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe that could be justified because you say, okay, she has some audience that she may be able to draw into that.
Well, and that's
but like Harris Blitzer, like who cares, right? Like if they buy it, it's not going to make you any more likely to go to a game, is it?
Well, but
I wouldn't be more likely to go to a Mets game regardless. Or maybe I would rather go to an I still can't say their name, Excelsior game than a Mets game.
Well, it's all about asset price though, right, Paul? And at the end of the day, you said it yourself, you know, this is presumably these deals have been in market for a little while. What happens to deals that are in the market for a while? The price goes down. At a certain point, the price is right. You know what I mean? Like you can look, if I got called up and said, you want these assets for $1, I'd be like, yeah, there's probably something I can do with them for $1. You know what I mean? And I'm exaggerating here to make the point. I think these guys have built quite a lot of value in some businesses. I don't think these things are worth $1, but I do think that particularly in the current economic climate, maybe it is a little bit of a buyer's market. And if you're interested in a play like this and you do have either cash reserves like you're a celebrity, or, you know, you see a positioning value like Harris Blitzer, and also real opportunity to further sew up a geography, why would you not? Why would you not at least? And by the way, it's not saying that they're buying, it's saying they're in conversations. I mean, if I heard that my local competitor was up for sale, you can bet I'd go over and have a look, even if I didn't really intend to buy. You know what I mean? Part of this is just good, you know, financial stewardship of a business. If somebody's up for sale, you get to learn a lot about their operations. Take that opportunity, you know? Yeah.
Look, my view always has been, and even more so today, is the value of Andbox is zero. It's really zero. It's like literally the value, the highest price I think anyone's going to pay is the assumption of liabilities. So you could argue it's less than zero.
Oh, that's
and yeah. I think it's hard to argue me on that, William.
I'm not arguing on. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I do think it's hard to argue with you there. I think if I told you and I had an asset, if you took esports out, if I said I have an asset, it loses tons and tons of money, right? You know what I mean? It's amongst assets of its similar class. It's an underperforming asset, right? In terms of, sort of forward strategy and positioning, there were known challenges with it, which, by the way, when we invested, we knew the challenges, but we were prepared to head. I'm describing an asset that sounds pretty this is, by the way, not a criticism of esports teams or anything. It's a criticism of, I think, these particular franchises and anchoring business models around these particular franchises amplifies the strongest headwinds in esports. And And it's true that when we haven't figured out quite the right models for leagues or maybe even team participation in leagues, buying what we know might be the wrong model or at least a weaker model, that's not, putting wind in your sails,
I think what gives me hope here is that Harris Blitzer definitely has a better track record in the esports space than the Mets do, or the Mets ownership does, right? Who own Andbox. Like there's a track record of failure, bad execution, bad management decisions, like just bad decision making in general, total mismanagement of money. Like there were a lot of deep sort of business issues that led to Andbox sort of being where they are, where they're out raising money, I think, for their survival. And I think Harris Blitzer has maybe a more savvy team internally that has navigated the space a bit more intelligently. They've acquired some pretty good assets, high quality assets. They seem to not have destroyed the value of those assets. Like it's not like Dignitas, they blew it away and the value went to zero the day after they acquired it.
If anything, the Dig guys were late to franchise, but honestly, I thought there was a time back in 2017 when the things had passed on Dignitas, but they did a big branding refresh. They bought back into the LCS with a smart play with Clutch Gaming. They read the market well, to their credit. Like they do seem to be a team that's read the market really well.
I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
So obviously you've talked a lot about the different leagues and even different team ownerships and all that. And there's a lot of examples of what's been unsuccessful. But do you think that there is a model, or is there a model that you're prepared to stand behind that you think would be successful in the next year to 5 years? Or is it too early to tell?
I mean, other than League of Legends?
No, well, yeah. more of like the Overwatch League. I know that that's a failing model, but do you have any idea what the model is that really brings it to the masses in the same way that professional sports are in the masses right now?
I mean, I know what William's going to say.
But what is it? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, right. He's going to say Rainbow Six, and he's going to say...
or buy my book. Those are the two things I say, right? That's it. There's the only... I'd love to answer that, but no. Actually, this is a really good question, and I don't know if any model out there is, and even the LCS model, I think, has problems, right? I mean, back as late as 2017, you can see open letters from team owners complaining about the LCS structure, right? Like the LCS only really started to work when it got so big that it just couldn't help but generate revenues, right? It was just, and when it sort of clearly emerged as the category winner and the safe bet. But I'm actually really, this is actually an area where I'm really interested in this. I'm actually looking at this. I'm trying to talk to people. I'm trying to look at unusual models. Like I'm looking at minor league cricket in India right now. They're on a really interesting model structure. And I'm trying, because I don't think we've cracked it. I can tell you why I like the strategy I'm executing right now in my business. And it's because it's fundamentally, you do need some benefits of franchising for stability. You just have to, right? You have to have some franchise benefits, because otherwise publishers can't plan, they can't build relationships, they can't sort of build co-marketing relationships. And teams, apart from anything else, they can't realize cost synergies. I'll give you a simple example, right? It's a lot cheaper to sign 2-year contracts on a monthly basis than 1-year contract, right? If you know you're going to be around a game for 2 years, your cost basis for that game is less, right? So you need some sort of franchising for stability, that's for sure. At the same time, $20 to $40 million for stability, I don't think makes a lot of sense today. So I do think the smart money navigating the team space is on what I'm, for lack of a better word, I call soft franchised leagues, right? You don't want to be in games with no franchising because there's no protection. You can't sort of realize and accrue value. Hard franchise games with really high upfront, it's probably too much leverage and risk on that single game. So thread the needle, go for places where you get franchise-like benefits. And candidly, also a lot of the soft franchise leagues tend to be done with publishers who recognize that there needs to be more iteration on the business model. So there's more flexibility in terms of future growth. But look, I mean, I try not to use this podcast to talk about why what I'm doing is, I like it. So, but that's my own personal take, right, for After Hours. I think it's about de-risking, de-leveraging, and trying to get some sort of foothold and stability. And so to be honest, I think Rainbow Six is great because it comes with a lot of the benefits of franchising, right? But it doesn't come with a lot of the huge capital upfront lock-ins that I think really over leverage a business against any particular model.
Look, I think the one point I agree with William is it hasn't been figured out yet, and I just don't have a better answer than that. Like I just don't. It hasn't. No one has cracked it yet. William, I think, has some good ideas in terms of where success is going to come. I love that he's looking in unorthodox places for inspiration, because I don't think anyone else would look at cricket leagues for like inspiration in terms of how to model. No, it takes someone like you, William, to think outside the box like that.
It's very cool.
But I don't think anyone has figured it out. It's a very murky space as a consequence. It's a very
but I will say, for my own edification here a little bit, and this might be optimistic thinking, but I sort of, it's not that nobody's figured it out yet, it's nobody's aware of it. Like I just have to believe sports have been around for so long, and there's been so many unconventional models of sport and so many different things tried. There has to be some league somewhere doing something different that when you look at it, you're like, oh, that might address the integration of live streaming and esports and how celebrities have more direct relationships with fans. Or, oh, that might address the content democratization and how there's a rush to free content because everybody produces it and dumps it out. So it makes it difficult to do firewalls, or like, there's got to be elements in other places that are poachable. I just think to date, what we've done in the industry is we've poached the best, right? We said the NFL, that works for sports. Let's just copy that. And we didn't do what we probably needed to do, which is some bricolage. We needed to pick and choose, buy the different spices that are right for the exact meal we're cooking. And I like to think of myself, I'm a spice merchant right now. I'm on a quest to figure out like what other flavors there are out there so that I can come back and say, yes, this is how I make my, William Collis's fish stick curry pizza, and you've never had it before, but it's delicious because it's your favorite fish sticks with your favorite cheese. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's
that analogy went really far.
We're changing William's name to the chef. Yeah, there you go. William Spice Merchant Collis. There you go. And I like racing. That was from last week. Let's talk about EA. Let's switch gears to EA, guys, because this one I thought would have some interesting discussion. EA is adding more of its games to Steam, so they've, EA, which has its own launcher, the Origin launcher, all of a sudden has been adding more and more games to Steam and relying on Steam more and more. William, has EA given up on Origin? Like, is that the feeling or the eventual feeling here that their own launcher, their own distribution is a mistake, and if we do it slowly and go back to Steam slowly, no one will notice, right? Like, no one will say we made a mistake because it happened very slowly.
I mean, there's two reasons you do this, right? And it's not one of the two things I'm about to say, right? Reason one is you are so confident you have the best platform, you can put your content anywhere because consumers will know that they're going to pick your platform. That's option one. Might not be that one. Or two, you didn't experiment, it didn't work. Your game sales are suffering. It's time to get in more places. And let's retrench slowly, and let's leave maybe true AAA titles like marquee anchor titles. Let's hold those back for now in the hopes that there's a smash hit and it turns the tide on the platform organically. But yeah, I think what you're seeing is there was a rush for every games publisher to do their own launcher and their own sales platform. It's hard to do. Competition really spiked with Epic Store. Look at what they've given away for free recently just to get you to use it, right? And they decided it wasn't worth fighting that fight anymore. And candidly, I also suspect Steam got more attractive, right? I suspect because of the competitive pressure from Epic Games and others, some of the rates got more reasonable, and all of a sudden the headache, the cost, the challenge of growing that own platform just made less sense as well,
Lindsay, have you looked at the different distribution platforms? Is it something in your research that you looked at?
So I started looking at them a little bit, but I didn't get too into it. I mostly started reading all of the lawsuits filed against Valve, which was a very fun way to learn.
For what? Which specifically?
Oh, lots of illegal gambling.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that was the reason why. That's the excuse they gave for shutting down essentially the third party sites for skin trading, right? Like CS:GO skins, and because they said, well, there's a lot of illegal stuff going on. So if we shut all the third-party sites down, we can control all of it, which is a convenient way to just take control of the market.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was, Steam was my first deep dive in terms of what platforms are doing. But I think that across the board, people are feeling a little bit fatigued by the amount of options out there, which is the reason why things like Amazon and Twitch tend to dominate certain spaces. So it seems more like this is kind of a predictable result from an oversaturated market than anything to me.
Yeah, I get the launcher fatigue argument, right? I get that. But why EA? Right? EA has a big game in Apex to anchor their launcher, right?
That's
like you need Origin to play Apex. The same way Epic has Fortnite to anchor their launcher. Like you would think.
The thing is that you just download because you have to. I mean, I have like 10 different video conferencing softwares, but I'm still going to click Zoom every time. That doesn't mean.
Yeah, but to play Apex, you need the Origin launcher.
Yeah, no, I know. I have 10 different video conferencing softwares downloaded, but I go back to the same one when I'm needing a different or more specific task.
Yeah, so maybe the
game, I'm just going to go to Steam.
Maybe the argument here then comes back to one of the points William made, which is it doesn't matter if Origin was a success or not. It could be, right? Like it could have 200 million users because they all use it to play Apex.
Exactly.
But if they know they can sell $50 million more of games by also having the game on Steam, why leave that on the table?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a similar integration where that happened, and I'm coming up short. But I do think that people download things for one-off uses quite frequently, and they stick with what their preference is regularly. So I'm sure that many people have, or I know that many people have downloaded Origins to be able to play Apex, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to select that for the next place that they're going to look for a game.
Yeah, it's a tough transition between like an Apex launcher and a sales platform. You know what I mean? It actually is a tough mental transition. And honestly, with all the integration Steam has and everything, it's like I play Apex. I will use that to launch Apex. When I buy a new game, I buy it on Steam. Why? Because I'm anchored there. I have my...
Oh, you muted yourself.
Oh, did I cut off there?
Yeah.
I said because I have, that's where I've chosen to amass my collection. Right. That's my default launcher. That's what's open all of the time. Right. And you wouldn't think those things should be sticky, but you're right. There's got to be examples of other industries where there's really high trial and adoption for specific use case, but very low loyalty, except to an extent platform. Like maybe TV channels. Yeah. Movies. It
happened with movies before Netflix, before like when you wanted to buy digital movies, there were lots of places to buy it. And I personally had chosen at the time, I was going to buy as many as possible on iTunes, right? Because it was one place where you could find the most. It was easy to manage. I got bit by that decision, actually. When I moved to the States, the entire collection of movies I had bought on iTunes in Canada, all of a sudden, you could no longer play living in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, because of the regional licenses and things like that. And so basically $1,000 of movies disappeared. So I'm not sure about this like centralized strategy. I kind of I never thought I would like the variety of launchers, right? Because I was a Steam guy for 20 years. There was no reason to leave Steam. And having 10 different launchers on my PC was a real pain in the bum.
Drives me crazy.
But Steam is actually pretty bad. Steam has not innovated in forever. Steam is slow. It's resource intensive. It's unintuitive to navigate. The information on the store page versus your library, just having a simple filtered library that shows up every time instead of having to filter every time. Like the simplest UI complaints they have not fixed in 20 years. Like it's a bad piece of software, really bad.
But they've also been
yeah, that is true. Why don't I just have my installed games? Like why? Why have they not done that?
You have to filter it every time. Every time.
Like a very logical thing to have done. Like, you're right. Because I don't like, by the way, I'm not alone. I own like 400 games on Steam. That's like most Steam users at this point, right? We've all bought those 99-cent sales and been like, yeah, I'll play World of Goo at some point. I mean, like, you know.
No, but,
right?
There's truth in this, and all that Steam has left is this like legacy. That's all they've got left. I don't know why that's still so sticky at this point, but it is for some reason. Here, Mike B. Cam says, agree with Paul. Steam's not optimized at all. Mr. Easily Amused also agrees. He says, seriously. Mike B. Cam says, my favorites are at the top every time. You guys not using favorites.
So maybe this is just your own fault.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Revealed on the live stream. William and Paul don't know how to use consumer technology.
If I can't figure it out, there's a problem with the software, all right?
I'm booting up Steam right now to see if this is true. I'm like
Mr. Easily Amused wants to watch you play World of Goo, okay?
Oh, bye. Yeah, exactly. No, but everyone knows what I mean, right? We all have that game in our library. We don't know how it got there. Like,
don't you think there's such a strong staying power though to something that's been around for 20 years? I mean, people get so used to one thing.
Yeah, but if that thing is bad, why are we so attached to it?
iPhones are horrible, but the whole world loves them.
All right. Paul, apparently, in interest of full disclosure, apparently there is an installed locally dynamic filter that you can click and activate pretty easily.
But turn off, like close Steam. Don't just minimize it, close it.
Yeah.
Okay. Start it back up. Does it come back with just your installed?
Let's do. By the way, thank you, loyal viewers, for Tech Support Steam Edition. Next time, Paul will teach me how to use my TV Guide programming box to record Real Housewives of Orange County.
That's not my forte, I think.
But let's be honest.
Lindsay can give me that. Actually, Lindsay, you and I can bond over 90 Day Fiancé, best TV show ever. Love it. Yeah.
Anyway. Can we agree though that the best product doesn't always win, and game launchers are the perfect example of that. Like Origin, I would argue, and Origin's not the best. Like it's definitely, I would argue, Epic has the cleanest launcher that there is, even if it doesn't have 1/10 the functionality of Steam. It's a pretty clean interface. It's pretty easy to navigate. Like I wish Steam looked and worked that way. But why hasn't Steam fixed it though? Is there an argument here that because we've been so used to it's really subpar interface for 20 years, and they're so reliant on the stickiness of the familiar that they're purposely not improving it?
Yes, you know what I mean. Like
story because. They didn't update Dota 2 until Valorant came out. It took 15 years, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Hey, wait a minute."
But
they are particularly slow at updating their own games too.
Yeah. But also to be quite serious though here, right? Like we think of user interfaces as being good or bad, but the reality is user interfaces are just a tool. They're either familiar or unfamiliar, and good user interfaces are just ones you become familiar with quicker, right? And so the reality is, yes, Steam is on an old interface, but have I ever had trouble launching my game? No. Have I ever had trouble adding a DLC code from Humble Bundle to my game? No. Even though that's incredibly stupid to do? Yes, because I've done it so many times, I've figured it out. And I do think, unfortunately, advantages like better UI or other, and Epic Store is better, right? Let's be honest. It's not enough because we've learned Steam. We've become so accustomed to it that it's almost the price of entry for Epic to have a better UI, because this is the UI we've already got. And at the end of the day, UIs just have to work. They're a portal, nothing else, you know?
It's just so much about missed opportunity for me, William. Like Steam could have been Discord if they really wanted to.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Discord could be Steam if it really wanted to. Like it gave up on that.
Facebook. They could have been, I mean, there's a lot they could have done. They could have been that dating app for gamers we talked about last time, you know, like
How is that doing, by the way? Have you have you made a profile?
That's right. Actually, that's what I'm doing after this live stream. Time to go. We got to do this. This is our last one. This is the one. This is going.
This is going to be our last one.
Yeah.
Roundhill launches sports betting ETF. So we know the folks at Roundhill. It's a Bitcraft investment, and when they launched, it was an ETF for esports. So basically, it was an easy way for investors or like anyone who wanted to have exposure to the esports space could basically buy, one share in this ETF, and it would give them broader exposure to the esports space. So it was a convenient, easy way to get unsophisticated investors mostly exposure to the space in a simple way where they do all the thinking for you, right? So they pick the companies that go into the basket, and now they've launched an ETF, but for sports betting, not even esports related. The reason why, this would be kind of a nothing story, William and Lindsay, but I think what stood out to me is it's really bothersome, right? Bitcraft likes to parade around. We're the pure play esports venture guys, we're investing in all these esports companies and tech and all this stuff. I never understood this investment. Like, I never understood the whole Roundhill. I get it. They were a financial product related to esports, but it never made sense for me from a venture standpoint for Bitcraft to be in this deal. Now, where they're expanding into sports betting and it's not even esports, like, it makes even less sense from a Bitcraft standpoint. If I'm them, I'm just like, and I really like the Roundhill guys. They're very smart guys. I have no doubt that they'll build a successful business. I just, A, don't know if it'll ever be venture scale, and B, it's definitely not esports related anymore. Like, it's only half at best.
Well, but also to their credit, right? Like, in my mind, I really do like the Roundhill guys as well. I think they're super smart, and more to the point, their timing is killer. You know what I mean? Like, they couldn't be launching bets at a better time, given how the wagering market is heating up, just across, particularly in East, and right now, right? Like, it's so. But just pause on that for a second. The fact is, like, if you look at what they did, they launched an esports pure play. That's it. They didn't struggle to try to invent a sub fund or another cut on the industry. I think, to their credit, they recognized there's very few public investable esports pure plays accessible by an ETF, and even the stuff in their fund wasn't really a pure play. They had to leverage their core competency. It could be esports, or it could be setting up funds in new spaces that are eligible for ETF style purchasing, and they chose to lean into that, and that's smart. And by the way, betting, if you think about it, betting is huge in sports. It's going to be huge in esports. It's growing massively right now with the COVID activities. Like, this will be more and more esports related over time. It's still on point to them. Yeah, I think this is super smart. And by the way, these guys pick ticker symbols like nobody. Like, man, they nail it. I mean, sorry, but ticker symbols are a big part of the game in this, and nerd and bets are pretty solid. So I'm the opposite. I love this. I think it's great. I think it's smart maneuvering, and it couldn't have come at a better time to announce it.
But William, do you love it if you're Bitcraft?
I don't know what you love if you're Bitcraft right now, but I just being honest,
you said it, not me.
Yeah. Maybe that's the answer. If you're Bitcraft, this might look like, sure, yes, yeah, why not? Yeah, let's try it. But I mean, I thought Bitcraft was partnered on Nerd. I don't think Bitcraft is partnered on bets, right? Am I wrong?
I assume they're investors in the GP that essentially launches and manages all these funds. Essentially, I'm assuming they have a piece of both. And everything else.
It's just weird to me that you have Bitcraft in the formal fund name for Nerd, but you don't have Bitcraft in the formal fund name for Bets, even though Bets is very specifically gaming tied with iGaming.
True.
I wonder if they didn't see some sort of, whoa, it's a little bit too far from them, because those guys have LPs, right? I mean, they are limited in how they invest and where they go. I wonder if they didn't have to pull back a little from this precisely because it was so far afield. Not to mention what it might mean. They're European, and there's so many different regulations in Europe around gambling and wagering laws, like what it would mean there,
Scott from Blue Ridge Sports Group says hello. Hey, Scott.
Oh,
do you have any
Scott.
questions?
Yeah.
Let us know. Lindsay, I'm curious. Would you, like, if you were investing in the esports space, is the ETF product something that that is attractive to you? Is this something like, do you like the simplicity of someone else picking where your money goes, essentially picking the stocks that instead of you having to bet on Activision individually or EA individually, you get exposure to kind of a broad range?
Paul, if I had the dollars, I'd have you do all the picking for me. But no, I do like this as someone who is not, I mean, I just don't have the expertise to pick for myself. So an ETF is way more attractive. And I think that there's a lot of people out there like this. I think that there is a story here about them getting into sports betting to try to quickly make the transition into the space when esports betting eventually becomes more popular and or takes over sports betting. But I'm not sure that that's going to be the story that actually happens. So I don't know if we got into this too early or too late. I don't know. It's definitely, it's interesting.
There's a timing question for sure,
Yeah.
right? And I tend to agree with William that the timing's probably good for the sports betting because
Right.
you know, they will.
I mean,
they will benefit.
DK just went public, right? Like, I mean, they were ready for this.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, this is like literally the soonest you could basically launch a public ETF for sports betting, and they were ready to go. You know, like the tendering hadn't even finished, and they were.
But it creates a secondary question, which is if the esports ETF was booming, like through the roof, like dollars being thrown at them from every corner of the world, and you know, hundreds of millions or billions under management, somehow I doubt they would have rushed a second ETF to market that was not esports related directly. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's you could take it as a commentary that, hey, maybe the esports ETF business, while a great idea because it opens up investment opportunities for people who are not living and breathing the space, maybe isn't growing as fast as they expected it to.
I you can take that view. I don't. I mean, look, I don't know how it's performing, but that was a good idea. The nerd ETF was a darn good idea. And even if there's some slower to adopt traction, it's only going to be better positioned as more esports companies go public over time. I think this is just, they were smart. They realized they couldn't do a second ETF in esports because the market is thin in public companies today. And they had to go. And look, you have to grow these things. My understanding is these ETFs are fairly passively managed. You have to justify your management take somehow. You got to launch new products if the existing one is based off of essentially a passive system. So no, I'm the opposite as you, Paul. I really think this is smart, and I just think these guys, man, they're on it for the
I didn't say
credit.
It wasn't smart, William.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out what is there some underlying conclusion we can come to based on this. And you're saying no, right? You're saying no, this is just another good move and nothing to worry about.
Other than there aren't enough public esports companies to justify the sort of subsectoring or licensing you would expect of a fund that launches a successful top line category like this. Like, you would expect them to launch after Nerd, you'd expect them to launch E-Team, which is the fund for only teams. And then, you know, BRs for the Battle Royale only investment games. But they can't do that right now, right? There's not that depth in the public market.
Yep.
I do think it's interesting that they chose an adjacent market. So maybe there is a longer term strategy at play, or maybe they just chose an adjacent market because it was the one that had the most publicly available companies in an adjacent market. So I don't know. It's a little bit hard.
Adjacent makes for a nice story, right? Because you can sell them probably as a package. Like, there's investors who would probably want exposure to both. But you also potentially cannibalize. Like, I don't know how much cannibalization there would be here. Like, if you're an esports ETF today, you're not going to be like, well, I don't believe in the future here of esports, but betting I do. Probably not.
Yeah.
So I think adjacent made sense. Like, they're not going to go do an ETF for something that's
right. Yeah.
way in left field. And I assume some of that portfolio. I don't know what's in the bets ETF, but I assume there is esports betting in there, even just indirectly, like through a DraftKings. But I don't know. To me, this serves a very specific segment of the market. Like, it's very, very narrow. You're not in the space, but you want exposure to the space, but you don't want to do all the work to figure it out.
Do you think they're trying to
that's the slice of the market
the other way at all? Do you think they're trying to get people who are more comfortable with sports and sports betting into the esports space as a way to say, okay, you already invest in sports betting, but did you know that this is also esports, and here's this other great ETF we have that's all esports?
Yeah, I'm sure the more mass appeal of betting will allow them to upsell people into the esports ETF. Again, I don't think we're the audience. I really don't.
Yeah, maybe they're just an emerging high risk, style ETF fund or high risk ETF fund, and this is just another. And esports was just a higher alpha sector that they wanted to go into. But we'll see. It's interesting though. I mean,
guys, that's all we've got for this week. Lindsay, thank you.
You're very welcome. This was so fun.
Thank you for being on. We're gonna have you on more often. Thank you to everyone who tuned in last week and the week before and this week. If this is your third time here, you're a champ and we love you. Oh my God. Did Mr. Easily Amuse change his name? He did.
Wow. That's
Derek
bold.
Unmasked.
That's bold.
And Scott says, thanks all. And Derek says, it's a great time watching you guys live. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here every week. And look, we would love if you guys brought questions, brought topics, anything you want to talk about. We want to make these more interactive as much as possible. We want to involve you guys as much as possible. If you have any suggestions, please let us know how to make this better. But we love doing this, so we're going to keep doing it every week.
We're just trying to figure it out. We're getting the format right. We're getting comfortable with the camera. We're figuring out what you can and can't pull up live on so just thanks for bearing with us, guys. But this is fun to do every week. We enjoy it. So thanks for hopping on.
And you will see more people coming on here, which will be fun.
Including more Lindsay, right?
Including more Lindsay.
Yeah, you were wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're so welcome. It was a great time.
2 things for people still watching. Make sure you go pre-order William's book, The Book of Esports, on Amazon.
Look at that.
Hold it up.
Scott says, where can I reach you? You can reach any of us. Probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. You have all of our names. Just look us up, add us on LinkedIn, reach out on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
We will be on LinkedIn Live at some point when they decide to approve us. And that should make things a lot easier because a lot of our following's there. And Mike B. Camp says, William, where can I get it signed?
We're doing free signatures for people who pre-order 10 copies. No, whenever I see you, Cam, we'll be at PAX East, right? Whenever they reopen events.
Yeah. I'm sure at whatever event.
There's going to be a booth at PAX East, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'm sure people could send you too, right? Send to your office or something.
Actually, true story. I actually tried to go sign the first, 1,000 copies. Like I was actually going to go just as like a surprise for the early. The problem is the warehouses are shut. So you can't even go in to like do like your surprise, like first print one. You can't even go to the printer and like sign off the print. I thought it would be a cool surprise for like the first N people who pre-ordered. You can't even do that now. You can do that normally. You can't do that in today's climate. Like the COVID stuff's it's really on lock about that. But Cam, I'll tell you what, you message me, I'll find a way to get you a signed copy. You have my promise. So
I'm sure he wants my signature, not yours, William.
That's what he really meant. That's what he really meant. He said, William, where can I get it signed? ... By Paul.
That's it. And second thing, make sure you go read Lindsay's white paper. I linked it, but I will link it again. I will link it again in Twitter and on YouTube in the description. And obviously you can ask Lindsay directly for it on LinkedIn. But thank you guys.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter just with my regular name.
Perfect. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys next week.
Yes.
We did it.